All right. Next thing I want to talk about, and this is more for fun than I think you could use it in your apps, but it's just for fun. In your homework, you're going to be learning about transitions, and the book does a nice job. Sorry, I got to get to the right place where it is. The book does a nice job of talking about transitions, and they're for a little more professional stuff. And a little later in the class, we're going to talk about how we can have one screen and another screen and flip between them. And then once you get that idea, then you can have as many screens as you want, flip between them and back. And often when you flip between these screens, it's fun to animate. What the transitions do is allow you to define using a very simple class transitions from one screen state to another. They do some nice examples of I fill in stuff and then magically, instead of just appearing results, they come in from the background and expand, or they slide in from the side. Does it really help your app? I also some pages said if you want to make your phone faster, turn off all animations. I think there's probably a way to do that. But I think it's fun, adds a little bit of excitement here, so let's see if we can get it to work. There are some links. Animation seems to have become a little more passe now the transitions are here. But I looked at the transition stuff and tried to do some of the things I can do with animation and was not as successful. So I'm still using both. I'm not getting any messages saying this is deprecated and you should use the new transitions class. So I'm going to use both. I spent way too much time last night trying to get some things to work in transitions that I could easily do in animation. The animation for me seems to work very, very well if you're sticking on one screen and you want to animate things. If, on the other hand, you want to change significantly, you might be better off with transitions. So feel free to browse these. They've got some pretty good examples in there. Animations are often used when flipping between activities, and that's what I was talking about. All right, now we've got one activity, the main activity. We could have a separate one, and then come back and go back and forth, and we have a third, and so we can have as many animations as we want. But we can use them within an activity. Android has a class that helps with that. First thing we need to do in order to use animations is define what we want the animations to do. So I'm going into the resources folder, and I'm going to once again add a new. This is very similar to the resources or the raw folder that we created. We're going to add an Android resource directory. The correct name for this directory is anim, and its resource type is an animation, so that should be there someplace. There it is. Done. If you make it the right type and you give it the right name, you should be able to right-click on it and add a new animation resource file. Now, when we did this for raw, it didn't work really well, but I think it will here. What do we want to call this? Let's call this move out, our animation for moving something out. And notice we get some of the header stuff. This is what I was hoping would come in here. When you define an animation, you use a set command, and then inside the set command, you define what kind of animation or animations, you can chain these together, that you want. One of the most common is a translate animation that basically moves stuff. And this is where the transition was pretty good. Remember, transitions are the stuff I'm not talking about that you're going to experiment with. Transitions weren't too bad for moving stuff around, but getting it off the screen wasn't easy. And I'm going to show you how we can actually transition something so that it starts on the screen and slides off. That I didn't find very easy. I don't know I even figured it out in transitions. So we're going to start with a translate animation. And we're not going to do anything terribly special, so I'm going to immediately close that and give myself a little room. Inside here, I have control over how the translate works. Translate from where to where. Go left to right, top to bottom, diagonally, whatever we want to do. First thing I usually define, though, is the duration. Now, one of the things I discovered watching a video this weekend is you don't have to start all these Android tags with the word Android. It's actually easier to start with the DUR. And then it finds things a little quicker, and then you press tab and it fills all that Android nonsense in there. The durations, just like in the timers in Android Studio, are measured in milliseconds. So if I want this move event to last 5 seconds, I put in 5,000 milliseconds. Half a second would be 500, etc. So that's the first thing I want to know. The next thing I want to designate is where am I going from, and then where am I going to. I believe the from starts, there we go. We can control both the X and the Y. For right now, I'm just going to make it slide sideways. You can slide up and down, and you can actually combine the two and make it slide diagonally if you wish. So I'm going to define the from delta. An interesting thing in animations is we can use percentages. So what I can say is I want to go 100%. I want to start from 100% on the screen, basically. And then according to my notes, if you put a P in here, that's 100% of the parent. So that's interesting. Now, is that where I wanted it? I think it might be minus 100. Just check my notes. (100% P). Okay. And then this is the interesting one. There's no P because the 0 is just a 0. You can't even put a percent on there. If you're going to 0, that 0, according to my notes here, this example starts 100% to the right. P designates of the parent container. So this object starts 100% off the screen, I think. The 2x delta designates where it should end. The 0, in this example, 0 pixels from its default location. So what this is doing is starting off the screen and actually coming in. This one's backwards because I want to go out. So let's flip that around. I want to start at 0. 0 pixels offset from where I am to start with. If I wanted to, I could make it shift over 100 and then fly off the screen. And then the 2 delta. 2 delta 100% P. 100% off of the parent. Not 100% of my original position because the picture might be small, but 100% of the parent. Now I could add X's and Y's to go diagonally. There's a few other things we can add to this, but let's just get a simple one of these things working. Now that I've defined this XML file, the next thing I need to do in my main activity, in the code, is to inflate that, is what it's usually called. All right, let me get the syntax. So now in the code, my notes tell me I should create this variable at the class level. Okay. You can also define them locally. It depends on how often you're going to use this animation, if you use it in 3 or 4 different places. But the next question is when do I want to animate this? I think what we better do first is let's go to the layout. There's my layout. Let's add another button. I'm going to add a button above Mickey. Did I grab a button? I sure did. Why is it so darn big? Okay. And let's change the text. So I'm going to double click it to animate. And change the name to button animate. And let's cheat because the book does it. Let's create an OnClick event handler here, even though I said you're not supposed to do it. Save time in class here by not having to create an OnClick handler. In here, we're going to say animate picture. It's another way to do an OnClick event for this guy. But because we've said we're going to, we now need to define a method called animate picture. So everybody with me here? Ask me to wait. Going back to the main activity, and I'm now going to go down to the bottom and provide my private void animate picture method. And here's where, when I was playing with this, I screwed up because I wanted to do this. But if you look at any other OnClick events, here's my OnClick for the one to my button. It needs to have a view sent in as a parameter. Which view, which object caused this click event? So if you don't provide it, you keep getting errors forever. I don't need it, but I need to provide it at least. And now it's happened. So in here, we can do all our animation. And because this is the only method that I'm going to be doing animation in, I'm going to define all my variables in here so that you can see them all in one place instead of spread out all over in code. So again, back to my notes, watch the syntax again. We need to create an animation object and give it a name. And let's just call it the animation test. I don't think we instantiated it. Pretty sure we didn't. Nope, just define it. And then inflate it. That's what it seems to be called today, is it takes this XML file and actually turns it into Java type code that can be processed. So this says use the animation utilities and load an animation. See how much of that I can remember. I want to define my Annie test as an animation utility. And I want to load an animation. I need two pieces of information. Who am I loading this into? The current class. And then which one do I want? R dot from the animation folder. There's only one. Well, now that animation is ready for us to use. Often I will do this in OnCreate. So as I'm creating my application, I bring the animation in so that it's ready to use. I'm trying to think of whether that's a better idea or not. Let's leave it here, see what happens. So what we're saying now is every time we click that button, we're going to reload this animation. Luckily for us, it's only this little itty bitty XML file, so it shouldn't cause a whole lot of trouble. But I've seen some animation files that I wouldn't want to have to load over and over and over again. You do this in OnLoad or OnCreate, excuse me. You do this in OnCreate, it does it once, and it's available to you as long as this is class level so that everybody can get at it. Now what do we want to do? We want to apply this animation to one of my objects, the picture. My picture already has a class level link to it. I believe it's called IV, image view. Yep. So I want to take my image view and I want to set its animation. To what? My animation test. Done. Is it set animation or is it start animation? Start. Think I looked? Notice there's both. There's a set and there's a start. Don't ask me about set. I've forgotten and haven't done that research since years ago. So this is actually started. But here's the key feature. How long does my animation last? About 5 seconds, right? Because I put 5,000 in. If I put a command underneath this, and I'll show it to you, if I put a command underneath this, it doesn't wait 5 seconds. It launches that command immediately. It's just like in Visual Studio where we did a certain couple things and we would go off and display a message box, and then the code just keeps processing over here. Even though there's a message box on the screen or another form on the screen, this code kept processing, and that was causing us all kinds of grief. Same thing happens here. This says start the animation, probably in a different thread someplace behind the scenes, happens automatically, and this program just keeps cranking along. But let's test it. Now again, what I expect to happen here is we said start at 0 where you are, and for 5 seconds move this 100% off the screen. So I'm expecting him to kind of move to the right. So there's my Mickey. If I animate, I expect him to go that way. Oh, not good. How come? Did it load the new one in? Must have. Maybe not. Let's try it one more time. Yeah, it must have, because Mickey was the right size. So this is different than the test I did before. Yep. So let's try moving this out anywhere. It could go way up. Probably should. Let's put it way up at the top. With all the rest of this stuff. And then take this inflation command here and put it in on create. Let me test that before we get too far. Might be more simpler than that, but we'll see. Yep, something else is wrong. So I'm changing my log level from verbose to error. And first one, cannot find animate picture in a parent or ancestor context. Did I make it private or did I make it public? Let's try public. Can't find it. It might be because I made it private and oh, that doesn't work. I'm creating my own OnClick handler. Animate picture. Is that what I called it in the view? I hope so. There he goes. And here's the bad part. It comes back. If I really want him to go sliding off the screen, why do I want him to come back? And so my next thought is, well, let's slide him off the screen and then bring in the duck, right? IV dot set the image resource to r dot duck. Drawable Donald Duck. Makes perfect sense. But again, doesn't pause. Starts the animation, moves on to the next command, and you'll see that Donald's the one who's going to be flying off the screen this time. Not flying, but going off the screen. Not what I had in mind. After the animation, did a little research on that one, and that was at 6 or 10 minutes to 6 when I finally found the answer, but never got it working. We have to create an on animation listener. With the on animation listener, then there is a on animation end, and then we could say change it to a duck. And I got that for you. So we'll play with that a little bit, but what I really want to get into is some of the other animation options that we have here. So what did I miss here? 2x delta, 2y delta. So we could move him up the screen, down the screen, but yes, you can do both. So let's get a little more creative with our animation here. Here's my move out. I'm going from where I am to 0. No, from 0 to 100%, but now I want to go to minus 100%. So now he's going to the left. Minus 100% off the parent screen. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the Y. So maybe I can just copy this. And I have not tried this one. I'm just experimenting. Have a little fun here. You might have to try the same thing to do some cool stuff. Can't change the same property twice. What did I do? Equals minus 100. So now what I think I'm saying is start from position 0 where you are and work your way up diagonally minus 100 off the screen. I think. Interesting to see what happens here. So he should be moving up and to the left. It's still the duck, but he is doing what I thought he would do. So now you can start mixing these things and trying things. What happens if I move him to the left a little bit, but up less? And he doesn't go all the way to the top corner. He kind of cuts across or whatever. And you can start mixing and matching these things. That's it for Translate. Questions? Now let's comment out. Remember, this is XML, so just like HTML, comment out the same way by putting in an exclamation mark, dash, dash, and then a dash, dash at the end. And there are other kinds of animations that we can do. My favorite fun one is the rotate animation. Every one of these, I always give it a rotation. If you don't, it's immediate. You don't get to see it. It just happens immediately. So again, just so I can see stuff happening, I'm going to set the duration to 5,000. But that was a long crawl, right? And in a real program, you might not want to crawl that slow off the screen. You might want to fling or faster and set it half a second and it'll go faster. So what's cool about this, you have control. All right, for the rotation, what kind of options do I have? I have them go from degrees to degrees. Okay, so let's try those. Start from degrees 0. Two degrees, 359. There is no 360 degrees in a circle. There are 359 degrees in a circle. And so this says start at position 0 and picture it as a big clock and go around to 359. So I expect him to rotate clockwise. You can also go from 359 to 0. You can put minus numbers in here. So you can experiment with these things. But normally I go positive numbers and either go 359 to 0. Just going to make them go the other way. But let's see how that goes. Now, because I put it in here, I don't have to change my code, though it is still going to rotate Donald here instead of Mickey. Excuse me. Whoa. Where'd he go? Come back. There he goes. What's he rotating on? 0, 0. His upper left-hand corner, wherever that is, it's rotating around that position. I think. But what if I don't want it to? Well, then there's a pivot. We can say pivot X, pivot Y. And what's cool about these is we can put in a percentage. Oh, so how big's my picture? I don't know. I don't care because I can put in a percentage, then rotate around what? The middle, which would be 50-50. So I want to pivot X at 50% and pivot Y at 50%. And of course, you could change that to whatever you wanted it to be. And now we should pivot in place. That's better. And if you wanted him to pivot around this spot in his head or this spot in his chin, he's got to kind of figure out where that is and experiment a little bit until it pivots the way you want it to. But I am going to go back to my main activity and get rid of Donald here. He's annoying me. Okay. So what else can we do with our rotates? That's pretty cool, by the way. We can repeat it and say, do that 3 times. And if I'm going to do it 3 times, I'm going to speed it up. Let's do it at a second and a half. Oops. So now we should spin around 3 times. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Okay, it stopped. What's with the extra one? Wow. Well, that's how many times we repeat it. So we did it once and then repeat it 3 times. So there's something to know. So I really wanted 2. And then there was this little interesting feature, which was it repeat mode? Yep. After you repeat, reverse. So make sure you don't get too dizzy. We'll get him reversing every other time. Now this is going to repeat the whole process twice. So I think he's going to go around in 2 different directions twice. And now the other way, and do it again. Interesting. So maybe here I want 3. Like I said, you just got to play with it, make it do what you want it to do. Maybe 1 cartwheel was enough. I don't know. What if I wanted to do a cartwheel? You'd have to go not the full 360, but 180 and end up on his head. But would he go back? Probably with a reverse, he would. Well, I got to try that. I'm curious. Okay, let's make this work first. Let's, and back again. Now, I think because he's starting in the right position and he ends up back where he started, then when he reverses, it looks okay. I got a feeling if I change this to 180 here, he's going to go to his head, and he's going to jump right back up and then go flip the other way. 180 is my guess. Repeat it once. Oops. I think that was the old one. Yep. Oh, it worked. Interesting. So you can imagine quite a few things here, I'm sure, just to spruce up life a little bit, make your programs a little more exciting. Let's talk about alpha. Alpha is a graphical term, basically talks about transparency. So initially, Mickey here is an alpha of 1, completely solid. If we change the alpha to 0, he'll go transparent. So we can say start at 1, go to 0, and he will. Or we can go the other direction. So let's try that. Again, I want a duration. How long do I want it to take for him to disappear? Let's stick with the 5 seconds. So I'm going to start, I think these have to be, let's see if that works. In the examples, I have 0.0 because obviously between 0 and 1, there isn't much unless you're doing decimals, but let's see if it lets that fly. I'm glad I didn't have to write that code. And the same thing with all the other code. How's your math skills, folks? These are 2D rotations. And there are all kinds of websites out there that show you how to cheat and make it look like a 3D rotation. I found a card flipper the other day where the back of the card comes up and it goes halfway, obviously, and then you start seeing the face of the card and then it goes the rest of the way, which is really bizarre. And we can do it the other way. If we flip this around, it'll immediately make them disappear and come back again. Like it better the other way. Make them disappear. Not much more to that one. And then there's one more. This one, by the way, in transitions is called a fade. There's a fade transition where you can make it fade in place. And so that might be easier to do there, but this was pretty easy. I don't know why I need a class to fade. And then the last one is the scale. And what this does is expands and shrinks. So again, a duration of 5 seconds. Now let's take a look at the options. From X, from Y, and a pivot point. So do I want him to just shrink X, or just shrink Y, or shrink down? I don't know if I can shrink down. That might not work. Probably could. Do I want it from the top to the bottom, or do I want a pivot point? So what I can do is have it shrink to the middle, kind of black hole effect. Let's try that. So my from scale will be 100%. My to scale will be 0%. So I'm going to start from full size, shrink down to 0, but do it using the center. See if I can pull this off. Okay, from X scale is 100%. The from Y scale is 100%. And the twos are both 0. Now if I do that, I'm pretty sure it's going to start at the top and just kind of shrink up into the upper left-hand corner. So let's just watch that happen once.
Shrink to the bottom. It's
I don't know.
positioned on the bottom corner.
No, the 0, 0 is at the top. This is 0, 0 of the image itself.
Relative.
This is relative to itself, I'm pretty sure. Because it was rotating. Remember, the 50% was relative to itself. And it was rotating from the upper corner up here when we did the rotate. So my guess is he's going to shrink this way. I win again. Right? And if I want him to go the other way, I could go from a size 0, make him grow back in again from that. But the question is, can I get him from the bottom? Maybe, because there is a pivot point. Pivot Y at 50%. And a pivot X at 50%. Now he should shrink to the middle. Star Wars effect, right? You need a Death Star there and then have it shrink, and it's going off into the distance. First game right there. Death Star is going away. Can you click on it before it gets to, I don't know. Anyways, what can be cool as well is to combine them. This says, do both animations at the same time. Oh, I forgot that. I changed that animation. But if you did that at 359 and just did it indefinitely, there's an indefinite here too. Infinite, excuse me. And no, I don't want to reverse. So this should be interesting. It's going to spin faster than he's floating away. Into the black hole with you. One other thing you can do is add a delay. So I can here, I can put from the start of the animation, there's a delay. Start offset by 3 seconds. This one doesn't start for 3 seconds. So now he should spin in place and then start falling away, is my guess. Never came back.
Because you did indefinite, never finished.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so here we go. Spin in place. 1, 2, 3. Now he starts flying away. Ah! So you can get kind of creative. I think there's an end. Fill, detach, fill after, interpolate, repeat count. Nope, not on this one. I thought there was an end offset or something like that. Wait till it's done. That one I haven't found. All right, we got a couple of minutes. This is not in my notes. I think I've hit the end of my notes, except for the view flipper. No, this is not a dolphin view thing. It's a view flipper. We can create multiple views and flip between them. And so this might work for your Unit 6, where I'm planning to have you swipe and then have it animate when you swipe, not just pictures change, but have the picture slide away, another one come in. It's kind of my hope. A view flipper may help with that, but I have not had a chance to check to see. I'm sure the view flipper still works, whether there's a different one. I think I saw a view changer somewhere along the way. Not sure that's the same thing. But what the view flipper basically allows you to do is put 1, 2, 3 pictures all in the same image. Actually, it's the other way around. You have a view flipper that has 3 images in it, but it only shows you one at a time. And so you just tell it flip or next, 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 and it automatically cycles through, which is nice. So you just tell it next, 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 and off it goes. So that's kind of nice. And then each of those views itself can be animated using all of these techniques. And those, if I remember right, if you have an animation on one and an animation on the other, this one finishes and then this one starts, which is going to be very hard for us to do here. So let me do a little more research. We'll talk more about view flippers next week. Great for games. I'm not sure how handy it would be for business applications, but I don't think we've been much in the business application world here anyways. So the next thing that I wanted to do is be able to chain these things together with different pictures and have things happen afterward. And the research that I did said what you need in order to make that happen is a listener. So here in OnCreate, there's my animation test. I really need a second animation. This is how he goes out. How do I want him to come in? But let me first see if I can change the picture after it's done. I'm going to create an animation test dot set. Spell it right. Set an animation listener, and I'm going to do my classic this technique, wait for the light bulb, add it, and it's going to say, you want these 3 methods, right? And by the looks of them, they're all required. So even though I don't want all 3, I get them. And notice it's hard, I'm sure, for you to see. On animation start, on animation end, on animation repeat. Could be fun. Every time it repeats, make Mickey's face change so it's big mouth, small mouth, big mouth, small mouth. But anyways, yes, I want those. And I want to modify what happens when the animation ends. I've tried this and it hasn't worked yet, so this is all I'm using maybe 5 minutes to see if it works better here. When the animation ends, I want to change the image to the duck. So now when I say start the animation, I expect Mickey to do his spinning into infinity sense And actually, I'm going to have to change it, otherwise Donald will never show up because it'll spin indefinitely. So I need to change my animation and say, don't do that infinite number of times, just do it twice. Still doesn't explain why he didn't come back.
It was still spinning.
Maybe. But why didn't he just pop back and keep spinning in place? Every time all these other animations, when they ended, once it was done, he came back to his original state. Oh. So now I'm going to animate, and I want to see when the duck shows up. Off he goes. Hey, making progress. Okay, so now the duck has shown up afterwards. Now this is the part of maybe where I failed, because I didn't get this far before because I tried to do a little too much. Now what I want to do is animate the duck. So I'm going to need a second animation, because if I apply the same animation to him, and that could happen, I could assign this animation to the duck and say start over again. But I need a second one, because I'm afraid of is if I put an animation in here, this on animation end is applied to that image. If I apply it here, it'll get into an endless loop, I think, because it'll end and then it'll start it again, and then so I don't want to do that. I want to start another animation. So I'm going to my animation folder here, and I'm going to copy the one that I have. Oh, it's got way too much stuff in it, and paste it in here and call it in. Okay, and I want him to not rotate but translate, so I'm going to comment this other stuff out. And then bring the translate back. And in 5 seconds, he's coming in from, no, to minus 100. This is off the screen, so I have to flip these around. I want him to come in from off the screen. Did I lose something there? I think so. That minus 100 is off the screen to the left. I want to come in there to position 0. And I don't want any of this Y rotation stuff, though there's no reason I couldn't do it. Okay, so what I expect to happen here, if I do this right, what I expect to happen is the duck will come in, but as soon as I change the picture of the duck, he'll start off the screen and then slide in. That's what I'm hoping. So let's see if I can make that happen. So here I change to the duck. And now I want to do an IV.start animation move in. I haven't defined a move in yet, so I have to go get it. Just copy this other one. Actually, it will cheat. There. So I created another animation variable. And down here I need to define it just like the other one, but with no listener. Finally, now that I've defined it, Annie in, I can use it, hopefully, right about here. Start animation, Annie in. Oops. Stop. This I didn't get to work in my office, but I was in a hurry, so I might have made a mistake. We'll see what happens here. Oh, it worked. Cool. So a little tweak. That was way too slow coming in, so I'm going to cut that into about a 2-second in. And there's one other thing, I remember where this goes. Let's look at my notes. And I wanted to show you is there are some interpolations, I believe they were called. Android Interpolator. And this one is an overshoot interpolator, and the lab that you're going to do for chapters 29 and 30 talk about these interpolators a little bit. So I'm going to add this Android interpolator. And notice it's part of the set tag. Here's the beginning and the end of the set. It is not part of the translate. So here's my set tag. And way too many carriage returns here. Not getting any errors. But the interpolator here says it's going to overshoot its target. It's supposed to go across the screen to 0, but it's going to keep going. It's going, whoops, I went too far. It's going to bounce back automatically. That's what the interpolator is. Just one of those, just adds a little extra bling. Or maybe there's other ones that say stretch back like in a rubber band and then go shooting off the screen. All kinds of interpolators out there. You'll read about a couple of them in the notes. Let's see if Donald comes in too far and shoots too far, or comes in faster and shoots too far. I'm just showing off now. Let's see if it works. Here it comes. 1, 2, blink. Boop. So really pretty simple. I was looking to make Translate do some of this stuff, and it was kind of, there is a cool one in Translate that I could not get to work, and that was changing from one image to the other. So it's kind of like one of them pixelates away and the other one pixelates in. I could not get that to work, and every web page I looked at had XML that was this long. I go, no, not worth it. So my goal now is for you to do some animation as you fling, to have it go off in one direction and have the other one come in the other side. Unless you fling this way, then it comes off that direction and comes in from this side. It should give you a couple things to play with. I think I got that figured out last year. And it doesn't happen immediately on the fling. You have to fling first and then it goes. But you can do some cool stuff here. All right, that went better than I expected.